Stan, we're live.
Thank you, Larry, the Liberty Guy. Welcome back to In the Dugout with Mike Stenhouse. We are approaching baseball season, so you'll be seeing a lot of this Red Sox cap in the dugout. Thanks for joining us today. Again, I have to start with some sad news. Yesterday, we had the really sad news about the passing of Rush Limbaugh. And we got some really sad news again today. A guy I only knew a little bit, but as many of you know, I write a column every month for the Rhode Island Echo. And their owner, who's done a great job transforming that newspaper, it's one of the largest free papers in the state, the Rhode Island Echo. The owner, Bob Duva, passed away last night early this morning unexpectedly in his sleep. So we apparently from a heart attack. So his daughters, his family and friends, we send our wishes and blessings to them. And apparently they are committed to continue publishing the Rhode Island Echo in his memory. But that's a tall order. I believe more than just the owner. He was a major publisher and operator too. So we'll see. But big loss to the Rhode Island Echo family and especially to the Duva family. And we send Godspeed to them. Okay, today we're going to we got two big guests today. First, in about 10 minutes or so, we'll have Representative David Place, second-term state rep from Barrville, who has submitted some legislation that we're very interested in, trying to limit, if not end, corporate welfare in our state. And then we'll have, as we always do on Thursdays, Dr. Andrew Bostom for all things COVID. And he will tamp down, he will try to flatten the fear on this, as the media and as the government tries to ramp up the fear about these new variants. We can't ever be happy with downward cases and we're doing well. Always have to be afraid of something. So we'll be talking about that with Dr. Bostom. Next week, I think we're going to have, since it is opening, I think pitchers and catchers report this week in spring training. Next week, full squad workouts. So we're going to have former Red Sox general manager, friend of mine, Dan Duquette, on the show to talk about the Red Sox season and how much their roster is improved or not compared to last year's disastrous year. All right, first thing, a little what I call batting practice. We're just going to quickly go through a few items before we get to our rep. Now, the first thing I want to show you, which I wasn't sure if I was, but here it is. So this is our feed right now on YouTube. You're watching it, and something went wrong. They are not allowing us, YouTube is not allowing us to have chat with our video. I think I know why, but it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I'm going to show you why right here. So if you watched yesterday on Recent Days, you may have seen this. So on our YouTube broadcast, and here's yesterday, you can see they have added some content here, a Wikipedia content about QAnon. So apparently YouTube thinks that our center is some kind of QAnon conspiracy theory group. I don't believe we've ever even mentioned the term QAnon on this show. Never mind promote any of its conspiracy theories. The only time I would have mentioned it, because I have said many times, as fake as the news is on the left, there's also a lot of fake news coming from the right. And that would be the only way I would have referred to it. But they are not allowing you to chat. And this is outrageous. Larry, the Liberty Guy, has contacted them, and they haven't responded. At the end of our show yesterday, the chat came on like for the last 5 minutes of the show. A lot of good that does when I can't respond to your comments. So this is the cancel culture, folks. You know, it's hitting us now. What I think happened here, you know, if you remember, we had a guest on months ago, right after the election, Steve Erickson, that kind of crazy guy from the former Board of Elections. But he admitted that the Board of Elections contacted Facebook, I think it was, to take down the post of somebody, Senate candidate Chad Callahan, who was questioning some of the election integrity in our state. So the state, the government, is proactively calling their friends in the corporate media to silence their critics. And I wonder if that's what's happened to us. I have no evidence of that, but I don't know any reason why YouTube would single us out on their own unless somebody tried to flag us. Just a little few quick comments on the passing of Rush Limbaugh. I gave, if you didn't see my tribute to him yesterday, I watched it again today. I think I captured it. I thought it was pretty good. One of my more personal appeals I've done on the show. So go back to RI Freedom /live and you can look up yesterday's show. But what's so disturbing are the hate posts. I mean, on social media, on my Facebook page, on my Twitter, just because I say I'm giving a tribute to a deceased great American. I mean, the vile, mindless words that these people can put out there. I mean, from the left, you don't see this from the right when a leftist icon passes away. And again, part of my goal is to further Rush's mission to educate you about the hopelessness of the progressive left and the big government liberal agenda. You're always aggrieved, you're always angry, you're always blaming somebody else, and you're always too much of a victim to be able to achieve anything on your own. What kind of attitude to live life is that? Where Rush Limbaugh not only saw greatness in America, he saw greatness in every single American. You and me and everyone else. That's the conservative message, that in America and with God, almost anything is possible. Regardless of whether you're born into privilege or not. That's the message. That's the message of eternal optimism and hope, not the crushing hopelessness of the liberal left. And you can see that hopelessness and their desperation in the tweets and social media posts and other comments and emails I've received put out. It's disgraceful. It's sickening. It's vile. And I can't believe any American would do that. So here's so just to, my way to fight back at them is to just promote the goodness that I believe. So here's some conservatives' view of what Mount Rushmore might look like if it was done strictly to a conservative standard. Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, Milton Friedman, the great free market economist and free choice advocate for education, and of course, the chairman of the board, the Maharishi Rush Limbaugh. That's all I can say. Okay, next topic. This is batting practice. Quick hits. You're aware of the Texas freeze, the cold snap, the power outages, because the state or certain parts of the state were relying too much on green energy. Our position is an all of the above position. We need to make sure we can keep America powered. We can keep Americans warm in the winter or cool in the summer. We need to be able to get from here to here reliably, point A to point B, whether it's for work or pleasure or commerce. And right now, as we have seen so drastically, that can't happen when you rely too much right now on green energy. It's a never-land dream. It's not real. It can't happen. And in our state, we are committed. Governor Raimondo tried to put us on a track to eliminate all fossil fuels by 2030. Do you realize people died in Texas? They died. There were no floods from global warming that killed people. There's nobody got incinerated because of global. People died because green energy can't carry the weight of this country right now. It's got to be part of the mix, and I hope it's an increasing part of the mix in the future. But we gotta face it, folks, that we're gonna need fossil fuels for many, many, many more decades to come. There's just no way we can eliminate it. And here's another little illustration of that. So in Rhode Island, and when the windmills and solar panels went down in Texas, guess what they needed to turn to? Coal and pipelines that transported oil or natural gas or something like that. Americans deserve that. Now, there's something called the Transportation and Climate Initiative that Governor Raimondo has signed us up for. And there's going to be legislation this year on that. And our friends over at the Gatsby Project put out a media release yesterday, and they have a website where they're tracking which lawmakers would support or oppose that TCI legislation. And you can see right now there's been 27 responses, and 23 of them, 9 Democrats, 14 Republicans, have responded whether they support or oppose. And this goes back to last year too, when Gatsby Project first brought this up. And you could see here those who have responded and those who haven't. So go to gatsbyproject.com. It's right on the front page, and find out if your lawmaker has taken a position yet and whether they're for or against the TCI gas tax. But this TCI gas tax is part of that same problem that happened in Texas. They're trying to eliminate, literally say they want gasoline to go away. Do you think you are going to reliably get from point A to point B whenever you want if there's no gasoline in this world? Again, the difference between the left and the right, the left in their hate-filled vial, the left in their overzealous reliance and religion of green energy. And here's some more left versus right stuff to show you. Just so you know, statistics are very inconvenient for the left these days, and our job is to educate you on them. So here are the 10 states with the best unemployment rate and the 10 states with the worst. Except for Vermont, 9 out of the 10 states with the best employment rates are red states with low taxes, low regulations. And there's Rhode Island right there among the 10 states with the worst unemployment rates in the country. All of them, blue states, Democrat states, high taxes, high regulations. Folks, it's not, if you value freedom and you value prosperity, and if you just want to be a decent human being, it amazes me why some people who have an open mind will align themselves with the left. Yesterday I said, when I talked about Rush Limbaugh, it's important to stand in your truth. And I understand there's a lot of people on the left who have a truth, and that's fine. They can stand in there. But for those others, I stand in my truth, which is on the right, never to be shaken, like Rush Limbaugh was never shaken off of that position. But there's a lot of people in the middle who have a choice, who aren't firmly rooted in either one of those two camps. And I just don't know, when you see the hatred and the vile and the failures of green energy and economic policy and hate from the left, it's just amazing to me how so many people in the middle side with them. One of the lawmakers who I didn't show you on that page, but it is against the Transportation and Climate Initiative, but is here to speak on a different topic, is second term state representative from Burrillville, Representative David Place. David, welcome to In the Dugout.
Hey, Mike, how are we doing?
Good. How are you? You are a Burrillville guy, right?
They elect me. I'm their people.
Okay, they're the European. All right, now I know you're a conscientious objector to wearing any sports caps right now, so you're not going to be joining me with a cap in the dugout. How come?
Well, I'm in politics on a daily basis. When politics shows up in my recreational activities, I turn it off. So there's too much politics in sports, so I got to shut down.
Yeah, there is a lot of politics in sports, and I've shut down a lot of my viewing. I have to admit that. So I can't blame you as a conscientious objector there. Okay, so we're here to talk about legislation. Interestingly, that you, at least in a media release, you and a far left liberal, Senator Sam Bell, each put in your respective chambers, you in the House, he in the Senate. And I got to admit that over the years, in the fight against corporate welfare, corporate handouts to crony insiders, that we have found a lot of allies on that issue on the left. So here is the media release that went out from the House Republican caucus, of which you are a member, a few days ago. So mentions you and Senator Bell as co-sponsor. Very quickly, what does this legislation seek to accomplish, Rep. Place?
Stop giving taxpayer money to multinational, multi-billion-dollar companies that really don't need it. The example I like to use is Electric Boat. They got like $20 million in sales tax subsidies to build a new facility that they can't build anywhere else in the world right now. So, the idea is to stop spending your hard-earned money, Main Street's hard-earned money, and giving it away to Wall Street companies. And the primary thing driving that is this competition, between states. You've got Massachusetts. If you remember back when GE, who wants GE right now anyways? And if you look at their stock, they pretty much destroyed their company.
Yep.
But there was this big competition for General Electric's headquarters. And, we went back and forth with Boston and in Providence. Yep. And obviously, in a game like that, maybe we're a little on the light side. But again, the states compete to drive. They compete to see who can get to the lowest as fast as possible.
Well, these companies play one state off another, right?
Of course. I mean, look at what was it? Amazon headquarters. They want to put another Amazon headquarters out here, and the state still won't release their proposal, what they offered Amazon to bring Amazon to Rhode Island. You still can't get that information publicly.
And there's been records requests for that, I assume.
I think what they do is it's exempt from the public records request because it's a working product. So they've got that little caveat in there. The lawyers got to hold that law and made sure that the elites can protect their own.
Yeah, that from the most transparent governorship in our state's history, right? Okay. Now, you are talking about this legislation, which is in your case House Bill number 5316, which we'll look at in a little while. You're asking Rhode Island to join a compact, right? You're not just barring such handouts in the state. You're actually looking to join with other states who agree similarly. Why don't you explain how that compact would work?
Yeah, it's kind of like a treaty. I mean, you only go to peace with people you sign the treaty with. We sign a treaty. We don't poach from you. You don't poach from us. The origin of this legislation really goes back to Kansas and Missouri, I believe, in the Kansas City metro area, where Kansas would offer some sort of tax subsidy to a company to move to their side of the river. Then Missouri would offer it to bring them back. You want up this tennis match over something like they're spending millions of dollars every couple of years for like 12,000 jobs that would move across the state line. And I mean, don't get me wrong, Rhode Island would love 12,000 jobs right now, but the idea is, like you said, these companies are putting us against each other. They're forcing us to enter the ring and fight it out for their benefit. And this is just says, hey, you know what? I won't fight against you. You don't fight against me. If someone else wants to fight against me, hey,
fair enough.
A different animal.
Fair enough. But even from a practical point of view, Rhode Island can't compete with Massachusetts or Connecticut or New York when it comes to being able to spend taxpayer money, because we don't have as much as they have. I mean, it's ridiculous for a tiny state like us to try to compete at taxpayers' expense with our neighbors, notwithstanding everything else you said. Now, why is it such a bad investment? You say it's one of the worst investments or spending. Investment's a baloney word that the left uses. It's one of the worst spending programs a state can have. How come?
It doesn't pay for anything. It loses you money. It sends money that would normally that would be available either in a tax cut or some sort of aid to a Main Street business in Chepachet or Burrillville, and sends it to a Wall Street company, and you never get your money back. They try to claim that the whole idea behind this is to bring the big thing is, if you could see me, the air quotes, the high paying jobs. Those jobs don't help the people here in Rhode Island. We pay the bill, and we never get any benefit from it.
Now, would this legislation cover something that also like drives me crazy? How these Hollywood movie tax credits, would something like that be impacted by your legislation?
I'd say yes. I mean, my interpretation of legislation, anything that is designed to draw some sort of business from one area of the country to another and offer preferential treatment to someone who doesn't need it, that's what it's designed to stop. It doesn't stop things like jobs training programs. So like I graduated from a program that joins with Electric Boat, that trains machinists, pipe fitters, and welders. And so it would stop a jobs training program like that, but it would stop, again, you giving Electric Boat, I love this one, $20 million in sales tax, breaks in order to build a facility that, again, they can't build anywhere else anywhere. So I don't know exactly where they're going to go if we don't give it to them.
Now, the media release calls this an anti-poaching agreement among state governments. When you use the word poaching, what specifically do you mean?
Okay, so we've got the two largest companies everybody knows is CVS and Hasbro.
Yep.
We've got those two headquarters here, and thank goodness we have them still floating around. They still have faith in us. But what if, Hasbro's been talking about it for a couple of years. If it wasn't for COVID, they may have already been gone, but Hasbro's looking for a new place to be. Their business model has changed. And what can happen is a state like California could offer them, a property tax break or some sort of corporate subsidy to lure them there so they wouldn't have to, it'd make it cheaper for them to build, or almost the taxpayers would almost pay for them to build their new headquarters, kind of like a sports stadium. Going back to sports, we get into sports. You look at the boondoggle up in Worcester right now.
All right, but there's another angle to that. So I get it from a poaching. If you move, if you're a Rhode Island company, then Connecticut would be, or whatever other states are in the compact would be prohibited from bidding or putting incentive package. But what about if, let's just take CVS. What if CVS was opening up not a new headquarters, but a new distribution center? They're going to keep their headquarters in Rhode Island, but they're shopping around for a new, ancillary facility of some kind. Would that be covered? Would that be considered poaching? Would that be covered under this legislation?
Well, I think poaching means taking from somebody who already has it, trying to take it from somebody, give it to somebody who's not supposed to have it. I'd say that's fair game. I mean, I think the lawyers would really have to get into it, and there'd have to be a conversation about, if you're talking about whether it's in Seekonk or East Providence, whether or not that would play out, or Attleboro, Cumberland, or something like that. Maybe you get into the weeds a little bit more. Right? This is more designed for a situation like I said, the Paw Sox, like the General Electrics, like the Amazons, and again, the situation we're talking about, these corporate headquarters.
So and your media release describes this as a first step. This does not cover all corporate welfare, as we just said, but it's a first step to at least protect those headquarters, so we're not creating harmful competition among states that way. Now, do you have any sense as to how much money right now Rhode Island spends on these corporate welfare handouts?
You can't get that number because it's in so many different places, and they design it so well that you just can't see it. And when you ask for it, they're not willing to give it to you. I think I don't want to use the last numbers. I think a gentleman by the name of Gary Sass had done some numbers, ran some numbers maybe about 5 years ago, but even said since that 5-year time where he had some students run it, they've all those numbers they're no longer valid. And we've gone into so many more deals since then that it's impossible to know. And again, it's all over the place. I mean,
we tried to take a look at it 2 years ago, and you're right. It was really hard to find. There's no line item in the budget. We were estimating they were giving away 40, 50, or they're offering 40, 50, 60 million dollars a year in potential incentives. Now, as we also know, many of these companies never reach those incentives. Either the economy changes or mismanagement. Look at 30
IGT.
Studios,
look
right?
at IGT. Look at IGT. Part of the current IGT deals, they're supposed to maintain 1,000 jobs here, and they're constantly having to amend that portion of the IGT deal. So that's one of the things we're working. Again, that's one of those things we're working on in the Republican caucus too. Is making sure we get a fair deal there. But that's an example where these corporations come in and they wine and dine our elite politicians. And they get the benefits of these major dinners and these big donations, these political campaign contributions. And then again, the folks on Main Street wind up paying the bill, whether because they have to increase our taxes to pay for other programs. And we can't take full advantage of having these companies here. One of the benefits to economic development is being able to get revenue from that increase in activity. And if you give that away up front, what good is it? I mean, $20 million, that was a lot. That's a lot of money that could have
Right,
been
it's
used.
it's a wash at best. And obviously that $50 million a year, imagine if we reduce taxes overall fairly on the entire small business community. That's how you get growth. Wouldn't you agree? That's how a free market works, that by keeping a level and fair playing field and by reducing the burdens on small businesses, basically creating a better incubator, we will naturally and organically grow more businesses, which will generate more jobs and more money for the state.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where if we take care of everybody in our state, we put together an environment where every business, existing businesses, that's my responsibility is the existing businesses, making sure they prosper, make sure that they're healthy, take care of the existing businesses in our state. And if we're doing that, if we're doing right by them, other people want to come and take advantage of that themselves.
Let me give you a story and maybe give you one suggestion if your bill moves for an amended version. In Nevada, my sister think tank out there worked on legislation similar to this. I don't think it was a compact. It was just a straight ban of state spending on corporate handouts. Guess what they did?
I don't know.
They got the counties to give out the money and
Yeah.
the cities. So I noticed that your legislation said state spending. And then the state figured out some way to reimburse the counties through some other means for that. And they got around the bill. So you might want to consider in the future adding, municipal government as well to this.
Well, there's actually a pretty good coalition of folks that are working on this legislation. So I've got a point of contact. And again, the reason why Sam Bell and I introduced this legislation is because we both found it independently. There's a hardworking guy out in Illinois that has been just lobbying legislators all over the country to get on board with this. It just so happens that myself and Sam Bell, the two in Rhode Island that picked it up, and honestly, we didn't even know that the other one had introduced it in the opposite chamber until I think it was 2000. It was last year, 2019, when they put out a press release or asked us to join in a press release on their end announcing it. So I'll talk to them. I'll definitely talk to them about making sure that's incorporated.
Yeah, because that's the loophole. They exploited that in Nevada, and it was infuriating. And let me tell you something that's infuriating to me in general, and tell me how you feel about it. And this goes more towards Governor Raimondo. So here we are, cavalierly, in my view, maybe not your words, but probably in your view, handing out money to these wealthy corporate crony insiders. And yet the money, the CARES Act money that was specifically provided to Rhode Island to help support struggling small businesses to this pandemic, was not given in full to the small business community. So we're giving out Rhode Island taxpayer money to these crony insiders, and we're refusing to give the federal money to these small businesses who have been harmed by the pandemic. What does that say about our government?
It says that the elites are always going to take care of themselves. Well, they have an R and a D next to their name. Those that are in wealthy, powerful people are always going to put themselves and make sure they're taken care of. That's why any other program you look at, anything you want to talk about, whether it be tax increases, whatever it is, those that have the means are going to take care of themselves, and they're going to leave the rest of us to pay for the bill.
All right. So your bill is in front of what? The House Finance Committee?
I believe it goes to finance, yes, because obviously it has to do with
indication that
expenses.
leadership is interested in moving?
I probably don't. Probably the first reason it's going to be a no is because I'm a Republican. And then, the same thing. I mean, the one thing.
Sam Bell's a Democrat.
Oh, but here's the thing. Here's the one thing that Sam Bell and I have in common. I'll be willing to bet a few looks, since we've both been in our respective chambers, that he definitely has voted no to more legislation than any other senator. And I would be willing to bet there may be one other representative that's voted no more than I have in the House since I came in.
So you're saying you two guys aren't the darlings of leadership, huh?
No. And we're outside the realm of even our own parties, because again, my proudest votes are the 73-1. I love 73-1 votes. And the same thing, like I said, I did it was on the town council. I had no problem being the one no vote, because if I see there's something wrong with it, I'm going to vote my conscience. I'm going to represent my district.
Representative David Place, I hope you'll come back if there's an update on this bill and keep us posted. Thank you for being a great guest today and really informative on this bill. We wish you good luck. We know it's an uphill climb, but we hope we can raise some awareness on this. Thank you, Rep.
All right, Mike, anytime. Talk to you soon.
Representative David Place from Burrowville. He is the Rhode Island Deputy Minority Leader, David Place. We invited Sam Bell, the senator who also put in identical legislation in the Senate, but Sam Bell declined our request to come on the show. Why? I don't know. We would have been nice to him. There are so many on the left who don't want anything to do with us. I mean, do you see, this is what I was saying earlier, you see how childish the left is? It's completely childish. I know Representative Bell. I've talked to him on many business items. I've bumped into him in D. Pasquale Square. We've had a nice chat. But the left, this is part of their cancel culture. I don't know if they can't cancel you, we're certainly not going to be seen with you. It's just childish, folks. It's just very childish, and I'm sorry. But thank you for David Place for coming on. Okay, so it is that time. It is after the 4:30 bewitching hour on Thursdays, and you know what that means, right? You know you've been waiting for Dr. Andrew Bostom, and here he is as soon as he unmutes and turns on his video again. Andy, welcome back to In the Dugout.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but we can't see you.
Oh, I thought I unmuted that too. Oh, there we go.
There you go. All right, there you go. Welcome back. How you doing? All right. Got that Yukon cap for us?
Oh, sure. Sorry.
It's just an in the dugout thing, it's just
Yeah, I forgot.
I harass my guests and I know they don't appreciate it, but that's too bad. That's the deal. That's the deal with the show. All right. Well, we're going to be a little disabled today. I don't know if you heard the open of the show, but YouTube has not blocked the video of our broadcast, but they have blocked any commentary from our viewers.
Oh, why is that?
Well, we talked about it earlier, so we're not going to be able to get any good questions to you from our audience today. Apparently somebody has, I'm guessing on this. I'm guessing that somebody has from the government who doesn't like what we're saying has called in, because we know that's what they've done in the past.
Mm-hmm.
The government will call in and ask their big media friends to cancel somebody. So apparently YouTube's taken a look at us. Apparently they think we're somehow QAnon related or supporting or something like that, because there's a QAnon warning message underneath our video yesterday. And
I don't know. You weren't a Vikings fan, were you? You were a Green Bay fan. You're a Packer fan. I thought maybe one time you wore the horns thing,
So
like the QAnon shaman or whatever.
I mean, if anything, we've criticized these far right conspiracy theories in the past, and we certainly have. I don't even think we've ever even mentioned QAnon on this show before. But there is a warning. So anyway, so it's just going to be me and you. No guests today. Guest commentary. Okay, let's start quickly. Let's quickly get through some statistics and screenshots. So this one is not the one you made for me, but it's one I'd like to show anyway, and then we'll get to the ones you made. So this one just shows the number of cases just diving in this state.
Yeah.
Overall. So that's great news. Your chart shows the positivity rate that matches that decline.
Right. I understand from Dr. Scott's presser today, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that we're down even lower. I think she mentioned below 1.8%. I think.
Yeah, 1.9 today. Well, it's yesterday's number. Yeah, I did see that. I didn't see the presser, but I did see that headline. So everything's looking good, right? On that front.
Yes. I mean,
all right. Same thing with hospitalizations.
And you can see the rise and the fall, and we're pretty much back to where we were in mid-October. Just about there.
And mortality.
Yeah, same thing with deaths. We've had and I did. If you have, were we able to go through the where the data comes from, Mike, or is that too difficult?
Yeah, we'll do that next. Yeah, I'm just gonna.
But deaths illustrate something because if you open up the site, the Department of Health site, you'll see, quote, new deaths. And so for the past, so the most recent figure up there is 15. Well, it's very misleading on that statistic because they're not, what they're doing is telling you about a period of, it's a composite of time where you're looking at deaths that have been collected over a period of time.
All right,
And
before we get there, Andy, let me just show people what you want me to show. So if you go to covid.ri.gov,
right,
you go all the way to the bottom and you click on this data portal. Then it'll take you here.
yes.
Where-
And if
where-
you go to the bottom of that,
And then
so
if we go
well,
to-
sorry. Let's start with the first things first. So these are just the data that I presented and you showed with the this is the infection rates. It's small, but let me blow it up a little bit. Right. So those are the infection rates, and this number, Mike, new fatalities. Do you see that new fatalities over on the left? You've got total fatalities.
Yeah,
Right. Yes.
yeah.
Right there. I want to keep that number in mind, the 15. Let's scroll down further, Mike, and so people can actually see how to use this site. Let's go all the way to the bottom. Keep going to the very bottom. This symbol, if you click on that and open it up, this is a giant Google document which anyone can access. It's a public document, and it allows you to look in a much more granular way at all the data. If you go down, this is a summary. If you go down to the bottom of this document, there's a whole bunch of tabs down on the bottom. Now let's click on trends, Mike, at the bottom, all the way to the left.
Oops.
That one, trends, yep. Click on that. And this is a giant Google spreadsheet. And if you go all the way down to the bottom, okay, and then across, if you go across so that we can see the deaths per day. It's one of the last columns. Right, total deaths and date of death. If you look,
Yeah.
Where do they get that 15 figure from?
Yeah, it's one.
No, it's not. It's called date of recording when they take a composite of that number 15. You know, the people in the press, I think they're incurious or they're uninformed, and they just report that number. That number is not the total that we have as of now for the 17th, which is one death. Now that number could grow slightly, but it's not going to grow to 15. And the point is, you have to go all the way back up here, into, I think it was the 24th of January, to get a single day where there were 15 plus deaths. And that's very important, Mike.
But what they're doing when they say 15 deaths, they're saying even though there was only one yesterday, we are now recoding deaths from
exactly, or there were
months
delayed
ago as a
reports.
death.
There's a delay in death certificates coming in. But for heaven's sake, you have the raw data. Don't mislead people and scare them like that. Now
They've been
probably
doing it since day one. Why would they stop now?
the one is a number that's probably going to grow slightly, but I guarantee you it's not going to go up to more than 3 or 4 or 5. And this is terribly misleading. And all of this stuff is done as part of a larger effort to keep the hysteria going, and it's just wrong. And it's wrong. You can't make a graph, Mike. I mean, you've got a count axis, the y-axis, and you've got a date axis. If you're taking multiple days and different counts, it's mishmash. It's nothing. It doesn't mean anything.
So this is all part of the scare that the government and the media are complicit in. So let me just run through a few quick slides and we'll end with a tweet from you and have you talk about it.
Sure.
So here are some headlines. Did I share I think I shared the wrong screen. Hold on. Let me redo that. Stop share. Always not. All right, here we go. So this was the, Providence Journal, I don't know if yesterday or today.
Okay.
This is the same day. Now this is in the Providence Journal. They're syndicating a USA Today article.
Today story. Yeah.
Fourth wave.
Mike, let's touch on this one because unfortunately Dr. Scott brought this up at the presser today. And this is, we have to call it what it is at a certain point. This is shameful of Dr. Jha to do this. Either he's kind of witless about what the data actually show, or worse still, which is bad enough, or worse still, he knows the data and he's essentially lying. This is wrong. This is misbehavior, and we have to call it out what it is. Look, there's something that has a crazy acronym called NERVTAG, but basically it's a British consortium assessing new and emerging respiratory viruses. That's the NERV part of that acronym. They put out a 10-page report which dealt through the period of January 21st and the whole experience with the variant that came from Kent, England, the UK B.1.1.7 variant. And they concluded very clearly in this particular report that the absolute risk remained very low. The absolute risk of mortality remained very low. There was no evidence for an increase in risk of hospitalization. They got a very mixed signal about death in terms of the variant versus the previously predominant strain. And there were a wide range of estimates, which included zero increased risk, which included some protection, and which included some increased risk. But when they looked at the absolute risk, Mike, and this is very important because those are relative risks, what they found was that there was either 0.17% in the non-variant versus exactly the same as the variant, or there might be a 0.02% increase variant versus non-variant, or there might be a 0.1% increase.
So you're talking minuscule difference.
Yes, in absolute terms, and again, the estimates were a mishmash. The hospitalization though numbers were dead on null. They looked at, I think it was 182,000 roughly in a case control study, split half between the variant and the non-variant, and they found a non-significant difference between the two in terms of hospitalization. Then then an independent report came out looking at 37,000 people in the UK. And they affirmed that, yes, there was a slightly increased risk of infection, but absolutely no increased risk of hospitalization or serious disease. And they also found something very reassuring. They said that the reinfection rate, so they were looking at the possibility of people having recovered and getting infected again, like the original variants, was extraordinarily low and equal. And in this report, this is an academic preprint that was published on 37,000 people in follow-up. What they said was that this is also quite reassuring because it suggests that both natural, and now we're moving into the period where there's been a lot of vaccine administered in the UK, both natural and vaccine-induced immunity are not the new variant. It does not appear to be more resistant to either natural immunity or vaccine-acquired.
Well, that bears out of the number. I mean,
exactly. And you're showing the big picture, Mike.
Yeah, look at this. In the UK, where the UK variant comes from,
they're falling off a cliff.
Look at the cases go down. Look at the deaths going down.
These are deaths and cases. Yes.
So and why should we be afraid of that here in Rhode Island? And
that's the big picture, Mike. And I always include that, and that's important. But I think we have to call it what it is. This is shameful. And I'm sorry. Look, I'm actually quite shocked that there are a lot of even infectious disease specialists who are God bless them, they're providing incredible care in ICUs, et cetera, to people with the worst form of this illness. This fellow's not one of them, by the way. But there are real ID docs, in the trenches. I don't blame them if they don't have a good handle on the world epidemiology of what's going on. This guy, Jha, is supposed to. And either he's ignorant or he's being deliberately misleading. And this is
this is a Brown colleague now. You sure?
I don't care. I'm tired of it. We're at a point in this pandemic where it calls for scrupulous honesty, and this is just dishonest.
Well,
There's no
what
evidence
would
to
be the
support this.
motivation for such dishonesty?
I don't know. I don't know, and I don't care anymore. I'm not interested in he's got a position of authority, and he's abusing it when the data are out there and they're actually reassuring. Both the report that you showed, which looks at the big picture, what's actually going on in the UK, and the same in this country, Mike. The so-called UK variant was reported by a group of University of Arizona virologists to have been in this country since November. Now, one area where it made bigger inroads, interestingly, was Florida. Florida is doing beautifully. So there was more displacement by this variant in Florida, for example, in this report, and this was a published rapid communication in a virology journal. There was more inroads in Florida than there was in California.
Yeah, we're going to get into that in just a second. But
Which was doing worse at the time.
Let me
You know,
get into
thank God
that.
California is turning the corner now too.
But here's your tweet. So about the UK variant, and I assume the same thing for the South African variant.
The South African variant, we don't know enough outside South Africa, but if we look at South Africa, just like you showed those data from the UK, South Africa, despite its chaos, despite its inability to implement non-pharmaceutical interventions and whatever variants of lockdown, masking, etc., it's fallen off a cliff. The cases have fallen off a cliff in South Africa too, home of the South African variant.
All right. Speaking of masking.
Well, double, triple, take your.
It's like 12 to me. 12
Yeah,
masks.
yeah.
Is that going to work?
Yeah. It's, and by the way, yeah. So this is the important thing. You pick your time point. If you want to say masks worked, okay, great. Look, they may have worked in terms of when it was originally, but then it was continued. It's still working. It's still working. Oh, what happened when the mandate was continued on November 5th? We went up the mountain again, and nothing's changed since then. So what they're doing is they're conflating the use of masks with independent phenomena, the development of herd immunity, the development of better therapeutics, the seasonality of the virus. It waxes and it wanes. And none of these things have anything to do with the issuance or the reissuance, the continuance of mask mandates. And the lack of efficacy of masks is also consistent with the clinical trial data. We have almost 2 decades of clinical trial data looking at randomized controlled trials for masks to prevent influenza. And we have one large trial, at least from Denmark, the DanMask trial.
Right.
And all these data are negative. Masking did not confer a benefit.
So here's a new one to ask you about masks. Now, we turn to you to try to separate the fake news from the real news, or maybe you don't know. But this is an article that was brought to my attention 17 years ago from Sydney, Australia. So hold on.
I sent it to you.
Okay, call it farce mask.
Yes.
Now, are masks significantly better now than they were 17 years ago? Or is it possible, like it says here, that masks can only be safe for 20 minutes, and once the moisture from your breath gets into them and moistens them up, that they basically become useless? Is that true?
That was the argument. That was the argument that the infectious disease specialist made in this Sydney Morning Herald piece. But they went, the public health and the business officials went a step further. They wanted to prosecute people who were jacking up the prices of masks and making what they called were false health claims of benefit. Right. So look how the pendulum has swung, completely. But what they were talking about was SARS-CoV-1. They were talking about the outbreak in Asia in 2003. And they found that there was no compelling evidence that this was going to be of benefit, and they didn't want the false claims to be made about efficacy.
So are masks significantly better now?
No, they aren't.
So 17 years ago, masks were not effective, and now we're trying to say 17 years later that they are.
Well, that wasn't a study. That was just a sort of a summary of the literature and the opinions at the time. I would say since that point, there's been a whole body of randomized controlled trial evidence to confirm what was being said in that op-ed or in that report.
All right. So given all we've talked about, right, the variants, that it's essentially statistically insignificant differences with the main and original variant.
Well, certainly the UK variant. That's the one
Okay,
that we
the
have the
UK, all
most
right,
data
the
on now.
UK, all right, agreed. We don't know enough. Given the mask questions, here's what one restaurant, I can't remember if it was in Naples, Florida.
Yeah,
maybe?
it's Naples. It's Naples.
They say, hey, we're not wearing masks in here, and if you don't like it, you don't have to eat here.
Right. Right.
Is that reckless, or is it following the data?
Not in Florida. I mean, and probably not here either at this point. I think between the naturally acquired herd immunity and now being augmented by aggressive vaccination, people can understand their risk. So certainly people who've recovered, who had a mild or even maybe even a not so mild course of the disease and recovered and are convinced that they were infected and recovered. And people that have been vaccinated, why wouldn't they want to patronize a place like this? I mean, it's getting out of control. And we know from good recovery studies, Mike, these are big databases from the UK, from Qatar, from Austria, that having a bona fide infection, say, for example, in the first wave in the spring, I don't know what the seasonality would have affected Qatar, but having been previously affected, out to 10 months, the reduction versus getting a new infection in a previously uninfected population is over 90% in all these observational studies. That's as good as what we're getting out of the mRNA vaccines, the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines.
I wonder what the communist state of Rhode Island would do if a restaurant put up a sign like that and opened like that in
Well, you certainly know better than me.
in our state.
Yeah.
So
You know better than me. That's beyond my my understanding. Doesn't sound like it would be well tolerated. That's my, and I think the people in the state are too terrorized to go there anyway.
all right, last item to comment on is what you had started to talk about before. So let me share my screen again, and I know it's difficult to read sometimes if you're a viewer, so bear with us. But
Right.
so this is a story from the UK Daily Mail.
Right.
It took a United Kingdom newspaper to do this, but two different states, California and California, with completely opposite COVID strategies, with basically the same case, hospitalization, and death rate results.
You know what's factored in here, which goes actually strongly in Florida's favor, is that they have a much older population. And that's key with coronavirus. So
Yeah.
these are just raw numbers, and you're looking, they're essentially the same. Actually, Florida's doing
Florida's
better.
lower.
Yeah, Florida's doing better, and it's doing better despite the fact that it has the disadvantage of having many more elderly per capita.
So look at this. So on what is this? New cases, it's barely under a million or 1,000 per day. I don't know what the measurement here, but California has been above that twice. When we look at new deaths, I'm not sure what new deaths are, but you can see.
That's
California
this is
approaching 15,
yeah,
15 per million. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but also you have to look at these graphs are not date of death, and it's they try and smooth it over with averages, but at any rate, the point, the large take-home point is that Florida is much more open. Kids are in school, businesses are open. The mask mandate has been lifted, and they have a larger elderly population, which were effectively sequestered and now are being very aggressively vaccinated. And by all metrics, they're doing better than California, which is still locked down, and the people are suffering.
So now that I know how to read it, let me just quickly summarize for everyone watching. So in new cases, California over 1,000 per million, Florida under 1,000 per million. When it comes to deaths, California approaching 15 per million, Florida never got as high as 10 per million. When it comes to hospitalizations, California approaching 600 per million. Florida never got to even 400 per million. So, and California is the one that's locked down. Florida is the one that's open. Wow, that's pretty.
And again, with
data.
Mike, with COVID, it's so critical to add the fact that Florida has I think the largest cohort of the high risk population, the elderly. It's certainly larger than California.
All right. Final comment for Rhode Islanders. Vaccines still, you still feeling good about the vaccines? If you, I
Well-
mean, if obviously you've said if you're in a high risk, yes. If you're not in a high risk, you've kind of said, hey, it's kind of the same. Take it or don't. The risk is, that's up to you.
Right. I think it's, well, look, I think for those that are at high risk, particularly those in our state that are 75 plus. And now I mean, it is good that finally the efforts are ramping up to at least immunize the 75 plus and the 65 plus, particularly the 65 plus with comorbidities. That's appropriate. I don't know why there was all this delay beforehand. Yeah, I think in those groups, knowing what we know now as the safety data are emerging, I think that's a very reasonable choice. Beyond the high risk groups, and there could be high risk groups of people that are below the age of 65, but beyond the high risk groups, I don't think there shouldn't be any coercion. And there shouldn't be passports to get into events and travel on airlines and things like that. I mean, that's just absurd. But for the high risk populations, I think the risk benefit ratio continues to favor getting vaccination. The more we know about it, an issue came up in New York, Mike. A woman lost her job. It was in the New York Post. A 34-year-old woman who had just gotten married and was considering having a family. She didn't want to get vaccinated until more data emerged about the vaccine in pregnancy, its potential issues with fertility. She lost her job. She was fired because the restaurant insisted that she get vaccinated, and she was hesitant. And I think, those things are completely inappropriate. She's absolutely right. We really don't have any data on whether the vaccine affects fertility, how it affects pregnancy outcomes. We just don't have the data. So that's the other end of the extreme. I think teachers should be in school. Kids should be in school. If it's a tiny minority of teachers who have comorbidities, then hopefully they could be more prioritized for vaccination. For the vast swath of teachers who are at low risk, they should just go back to class and not worry about being vaccinated.
All right. That's your words of advice from Dr. Andrew Bostom. Andy, thank you. We'll see you next Thursday. Thank you. As always.
Take care, Mike.
Andy Bostom. All right. Well, maybe the Larry Liberty guy can come in and update me, but I guess I had to refresh my YouTube page that I monitor off to the side. And apparently at some point, Larry, the chat came back. When was that?
Yes, Dan, it seems like the chat was working sporadically for some people and not for others. And the video quality is a little bit lower today, but we can definitely say that we got flagged on the QAnon stuff. So I'm not too happy with YouTube. Are you?
No, and and again, just to show anyone that might have joined us late, we don't exactly know what's going on. All of a sudden, chat has been taken down. Did we get a notice from YouTube on this?
No notice. We
don't know really if they purposely took us down or if it's some kind of technical error, right? We don't really know, do we?
We know for sure they flagged us with this,
which I'm showing here on the screen.
Right.
They've got for whatever reason, they're putting this anti-QAnon Wikipedia post on our page, which we can only assume is they think we're some kind of part of the QAnon conspiracy theory. And so we are assuming it's because of that the chat wasn't working.
It would be
we don't know for sure, right? We don't know.
One heck of a coincidence, though, if they put this
Sure
up.
as heck is.
But we don't know for sure. But it would be one heck of a coincidence. We do know for sure that this is up.
All right. So for those of you, I just only in the last 2 or 3 minutes was able to see that the chat came. If we didn't get to ask a question of Dr. Bostom, I apologize, and we'll ask him next week. But to everybody I see here who's been making some comments, Roland and of course Larry and Claire, thank you for watching, and we will see you next week. Next week, don't forget, we're going to have, I don't know which day yet, Wednesday or Thursday, I think, but we're going to have Dan Duquette, I believe, former general manager, Boston Red Sox. He lives in Western Mass. He runs some baseball schools and facilities out there. I think someday he'll end up back in professional baseball, but we'll ask him next week, and we've got a preview of the Red Sox season. I haven't been following the Red Sox as closely as I have in past years, so we're going to have, all of us will catch up with Dan Duquette next week. Again, just to go back to where I started, as I laid out, if you didn't see the beginning of the show, just tune in. It's only about 5 minutes. But, you know, the difference now between the left and the right is so amazingly huge. That gap is massive, both in terms of public policy, Green Deal. Look how the left policies have killed people in Texas. But most disturbingly to me is just civility. The left is vicious and vile and mean, and they seek to win at all costs. Even as I commented yesterday, like David Cicilline, if you have to break the rules or ignore the rules or fabricate or tamper with evidence. This is today's left. Is it an outgrowth of the trophy for everybody attitude and approach, that we've been doing and pampering our youth with for the last few decades? Are those 10, 12, 14-year-olds who are now 30-somethings and who are influential in Congress and in the media and in our state house? Is everything we predicted 20 years ago about coddling and trophies for everybody, win or lose, is not the right way to teach people about real life? Is this petulance, this spoiled nature, is this what's driving the cancel culture and the hate from the left? I don't know. I've been kind of looking for psychologists. I've Googled, done a lot of Googling, and I've been looking for studies that professional psychology studies that explain why, again, I know I'm oversimplifying and stereotyping, but to me it's true, why those on the far left are so hate-filled, why they're so petulant, but more importantly, why they feel they always have to be afraid of something and therefore want to subject themselves to big government mandates ostensibly there to protect them. Where on the conservative side, we're happy to go it alone. We don't need big government protecting us. We don't want big government protecting us. And you can believe what you want, but you'll just leave us the hell alone. Liberals can't think that way. If they're afraid of something, they want us to be afraid of it. And they want us to be restricted in the same way that they want to be restricted. Just leave us the hell alone. Let us live our lives the way we want to, and you can live yours the way you want to. That's conservatism. Anyway, sorry, going off on a tangent. I really don't understand the psychology of the left. I understand their policies. I understand their petulance, and I understand their hate now, but I don't understand the psychology behind it. And I really love to find a psychologist or a study to explain that. But anyway, that's for a future day, future month, future year, maybe. For In the Dugout, Mike Stenhouse, we will see you next week. Thank you. Good day.